Yes, it works well.
Great, thank you.
Super good, super good.
So after that, because after that I'm going to be sharing my screen for the PowerPoint and the demo. But for the moment, I see that the my screen option under share is gray. Will you be activating it later?
That's right. So right now I'm the speaker and I will pass it to you. So what I'll do first is I'll speak for a few minutes, giving a little bit of an introduction about the EaSI about the EaSI program, the fact that this is organized with the support of EaSI. Then I will present a slide where I show you for speakers. I'll just mention you by name and title without going into any kind of depth about that. And then I will hand over the floor to you, and you will have the chance to start sharing at that moment. So
okay, great.
Okay. I'm going to grab myself a coffee before we get started, and I will start in 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So does this mean, Ayako, you needed to get out of Internet Explorer and then in again to make the link work? Or it's just, okay.
Oh, you mean for Pallavi?
Mm-hmm.
I just opened the link again. So essentially, I had 2 taps of the same link, but then the second time it worked.
Okay. Maybe just in process.
Hello, Pallavi. I just make you panelist. So if you unmute yourself, you will see that you have the same.
Yes. Yes. Hi.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm here.
Hi, Pallavi. Great to see you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
It's a very gender panel, huh, this one.
Majority women.
So yes, I'm here with my colleague Ayako, and we have Laurence from Proparco as well. And
hello.
Pallavi is representing Maha Agriculture Microfinance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Oscar and Elena from the organization. So we're ready to go.
All right, that's excellent. What I'll do now is I'll start sharing my screen. We already have 36 people dialed in, which is great. I'm going to share the PowerPoints, and then if it's possible to just confirm that it's looking good.
Yes, looks good.
Yeah? Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining, first of all. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors and our partners for today's conference. So the conference of EMN this week is titled Working Together in a New Normal, and we are organizing it in partnership with the EIB Group, and we are also sponsored by the Galileo Network and by BNP Paribas for this, for which we are, of course, very thankful. This specific session is on the, to give you a little bit more insight into the Atlas project. And for this, we are organizing this session with the support of the EaSI technical assistance. And I'll say a few words about that now before we actually get into the content of the session. So please be reminded, first of all, that the session is being recorded and that the recording, along with any presentations and other material, will be shared with the attendees after the conference. The EaSI Technical Assistance Program aims at promoting social inclusion, combating poverty, and improving working conditions in Europe, and is managed by the European Commission and brings together 3 axes, of which the most important one for us is microfinance and social entrepreneurship axis. We can see on the slide that I'm about to show now that there are 3 general categories of support offered. The first one on the left is the category of EaSI Technical Assistance. That's all the ones that are noted in blue on this current slide. Then on the yellow one, there we see the EaSI financial instruments managed by the EIF, and on the very right we see the EaSI grants in gray, things such as the transaction cost support grant and the business development grant. The EaSI program technical assistance is delivered by a consortium of actors, which include the Frankfurt School, the European Microfinance Network, Microfinance Center, and for assessment, evaluation, and ratings, there is MFR, so Microfinance Rating, the organization that is also with us here today, who will be providing a lot more information about their Atlas project. To apply for technical assistance under the TA program, you can respond to the call. There's an open call that's on the European Commission website, and to be able to sign up, you will also need to sign up for the European Code of Good Conduct or endorse the European Code of Good Conduct. The program overall runs from July 2018 and will run until July 2022. And if you want to know more about the financial product offered under the EaSI program, we invite you to go to the EaSI TA website, which you can find at the end of this presentation. Before we actually give the floor to our speakers, I want to also let you know that at the end there will be a chance for questions and answers. And just to give you a little bit of an update on the interface, there is a little hand icon that you can see at the bottom right that's next to the little megaphone icon. You can use this to raise your hand, which gives us the chance to then unmute you and give you the floor to ask your question. Or you can ask whatever questions you have on an ongoing basis, either in the chat or in the Q&A section, which you can unlock by clicking on the little icons on the bottom right. So good. I think that's everything in terms of introduction. And today, then I would like to introduce our four speakers. We have Lucia Spaggiari, who is the Business Development Director for Microfinance Rating, and her colleague Ayako Iba, who is Regional Manager for Europe. Then we also have Laurence Bottens, who is Senior Investment Officer for Proparco, and Pallavi Hariharan, who is Impact Manager for Maha Agricultural Microfinance. And then there is myself, Oscar Verlinden, who is the moderator for the session, but I will not speak for too much longer. I will just give the floor to our great colleagues. Now, before I give the floor to Lucia, one question about they have a video that they would like to show. At which point in the presentation would you like us to play the video?
We can do that right now, please. Okay.
Okay, excellent. Let's do that then. So the next step will be that I stop sharing the PowerPoint, and then I will start sharing the video. So there we go. Video is loading, and hopefully once I press play now, everyone will be able to hear it.
Thanks.
Great.
Oscar.
Great, thank you very much. So in order to set up the presentation for the next section, I will give the presenter rights to Ayako, I believe, and then Ayako can set up the second section of the presentation. Ayako, can you confirm? Looks great. Perfect, looks great. Okay, then from now on you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Many thanks, Oscar. So first of all, welcome everyone. It is a pleasure to virtually be with you today. Here is Lucia Stajari, Business Development Director at MFR, joined by my colleague Ayako and by partners Proparco and Maha Microfinance Agriculture. What we would like to share with you today is some news about an initiative that was launched in January this year. It is called Atlas. Please, Ayako, feel free to move on in the presentation. So Atlas is managed by MFR under the governance of the organizations that you see on the screen. These include sponsor organizations, mainly European DFIs, that supported the startup and launch phase of the initiative, including AFD, Proparco, ADA, the Luxembourg Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Liechtenstein Development Finance Institution, as well as the British CDC and the Swedish Corporation. Atlas is joined by a number of frameworks and standard setters, including CERES with its SPI4 tool, including the Social Performance Task Force standards, as well as the Microfact with financial statements and financial risk ratios, and the Mimosa Index of Market Saturation and Over-Indebtedness. Next, please. So Atlas centralizes data of financial service providers on a number of areas. Those include pricing, client protection, social, as well as financial metrics. The vision is to centralize in one place data around a number of topics so that a user can get the full picture and can make decisions based on balanced elements. The type of financial service providers included on Atlas include microfinance institutions, SME banks, but also access to energy companies using pay-as-you-go models, and fintechs as well, that can be benchmarked against its own specific peer group. As of now, the coverage of Atlas for the last few years is 1,200 financial service providers over 130 countries. Next, please. So how does this work? Data can be provided by a variety of sources. Atlas is grateful to the MIX market, and it has loaded the MIX market historical database. You may remember MIX took the decision to discontinue collection of microfinance institutions data last year. Atlas also includes the historical database of microfinance transparency about responsible pricing. And when it comes to fresh sources of data, these include MFR with its ratings and certifications, the CERES SPI4 scores, as well as data provided by investors using Atlas to manage their reporting flow with investees, international networks who do the same with their affiliates, as well as professional associations and even individual financial service providers. So far, Atlas is grateful to 10 data provider partners that share data of multiple FSPs, in addition to a large number of individual financial service providers. We are also very happy about the results in terms of uptake of the initiative. So in the first 10 months of operations, 10 subscribers partnered with Atlas, and 2 data management initiatives are using Atlas to centralize their data. These are the CGAP Pulse Survey and the GOGLA IFC and CGAP PAYGO Perform data collection pilot. So the business model is critical. Atlas the decision to let Atlas live was made at the end of 2017 after a pilot that was aimed at analyzing, first of all, the long-term sustainability of such a model, because MFR is quite clear on doing social business in a sustainable manner. And so the model is a hybrid one where there is a combination of revenues from subscriptions and subsidies from DFIs. We had originally planned to break even in 2025, but given the very positive results of this year, we expect to do that much earlier. Next, please, Ayako. So how can data go to Atlas? The idea is, for MFR to be an independent player who welcomes data from a number of initiatives, frameworks, and labels. And so data from many shapes are welcome on Atlas. The ways in which data can be reported is an Atlas reporting tool that can be customized based on subscribers' preferences, MFR ratings and certifications, Series SPI4, MF transparency, annual percentage rate calculator, as well as the Microfact fact sheet. Data can be provided in 2 ways, anonymized or nominative. In any case, data are not publicly available, but only shared with subscribers. The ownership of data never changes. It always remains with the data provider. MFR role is simply the one of a manager taking care of the flows of data. Next, please. So now I would like to leave the floor to my colleague Ayako Iba, Regional Manager for Europe, who will share with us a demo of Atlas.
Hi, Lucia. Thank you so much. So, let's see. If you agree that you can see my Google Chrome screen, I'd love to continue with the demo.
Yes.
Great, excellent. So usually you know me as the Regional Manager Europe, but this time it's a great pleasure to be participating in this EMN Conference 2020 and to be presenting with my dear colleague Lucia about our Atlas website and initiative. So the first thing you should know, or that we'd like to share, is where you can find our website. It's atlasdata.org, as you can see. And as you can see, I've logged in as myself and as a subscriber. What this means is that whatever you're going to see in this demo is what an average subscriber can see. Yeah. And since I'm sure that many of you in the audience have been evaluated for the European Code of Good Conduct and have been awarded this certification, I would like to take just a moment to let you know what you as a microfinance institution or a financial service provider in general would have to do to upload data in Atlas. So for the European Code of Good Conduct code evaluation, many of you are familiar with the MIC-Pro platform. So that's a great thing because that means that you're well accustomed to sharing your data on social and financial performance. So how would you do that on Atlas in case you're interested? You'd go to Provide, And under Provide, there is this downloadable Excel template, which then you download, you put your data down, and in the case of Atlas, there's an Atlas team which uploads the data for you on this website. Anyway, I'm sure that you're more interested in understanding the fun things that Atlas can do, so let's move on to the demo. So to see the infographics and to compare yourself with the benchmark of your choice, what you would do is go to Data and then go to Free Search. Yeah. So I happen to have the page already loaded, and this is it. And I'd like to go through it with you very quickly, just to show you how easily you can choose the indicators of your choice and compare yourself with the benchmark. So let's see, perhaps for this occasion, we're going to compare European financial service providers versus the whole global benchmark of financial service providers that are in Atlas data. So why don't we go first for average disbursed loan amount, followed by, we could look for a main outreach indicator, so purely the number of active borrowers, yeah, to see the scale of operations. Then we can go into some very basic social performance indicators we're used to, such as the percentage of active borrowers that live in rural areas, followed by the percentage of borrowers that are female. Okay. Now let's go a bit more on the financial side. We can look into return on assets, why not, to compare profitability levels, and as well as our good old favorite OSF, operational self-sufficiency. Last but not least, we're providing microcredit most of the time, I hope. So let's look at two loan portfolio indicators, PAR 30, portfolio at risk 30, and the percentage of your portfolio that is restructured or in moratorium. All right. So for this demo, I've selected about 8 indicators balancing social and financial performance and some loan portfolio quality indicators. Now let's let the website run. Not yet. First, I have to say what I want to compare with what benchmark. So in this case, we're going to compare data from all East European countries and West European countries against the whole global benchmark, the whole global database that Atlas has. Now we can start crunching data. So as the machine is crunching data, I'd like to mention that for those of you who have participated in the EMN survey of this year and actually gave consent to share the information with this Atlas platform, you will actually have access to this website to be able to compare your performance against benchmarks. So, for example, as Lucia mentioned earlier, if you gave consent to share data with Atlas and to disclose your institution's name, you will be able to compare your institution's performance against a regional benchmark. So the most similar peers that you have in your market, in your larger market. If you instead gave consent to share data, but anonymously, so without saying the name of your institution, then you will be able to compare your performance against the global benchmark. Okay, I see it got loaded. So what do we see? So the infographics on Atlas are mainly organized in this way. There's a graph per indicator. The orange bar is your selection. So in this case, MFI data from East and Western European countries versus the light blue bar, which is the global benchmark in this occasion. And for now, it is aggregated in 4 years period, including 2020. But if you click on the bars, then there's a split per year, which allows you to see the historical trend. Okay, so what do we see in the case of average disbursed loan amount? Well, clearly, and it's no surprise, that in Europe, the average disbursed loan amount for the financial inclusion sector has always been higher than our global peers, our global benchmark. However, what is even more interesting is that recently, this average disbursed loan amount has significantly increased, even up to 40,000 euros. We all know, or I could remind the audience, that for the moment, the definition of microcredit in Europe is 25,000 euros, just about there. So it's interesting to see that as far as we gather from us, the average loan amount has actually gone over that maximum cap. Moving forward, number of active borrowers. Well, don't be so upset. We are comparing our European microfinance institutions against the likes of large microfinance banks in other regions of the world. And in fact, if you split it per year, the huge significant difference is consistent across the years. But the good thing is that in Europe, the scale is slowly increasing. And another thing is that you might have noticed that there's a little block on the left, yeah? And many of you might recognize this as one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. So what this means is that whenever you select an indicator which is somehow relevant to one of the SDGs, then Atlas will remind you here to which goal it is linked. Moving forward, percentage of borrowers in rural areas. Okay, so like this, we would think that our global peers tend to serve more people in rural areas than in Europe. When we split it across years, actually the data is quite mixed. So perhaps here I'm no magician. Let's see what the next years will tell us about the coverage of rural areas. For the outreach to women, so globally there has been a strong focus for serving women, more so than Europe. And let's see if this trend stays. Moving on to finance. What does this mean? If we split it per year, if you consider that return on assets 0% is about here, it is evident that the institutions in Europe have a hard time to make profit. That being said, we all know that many institutions working in this sector in Europe are small or rather new, greenfield institutions in many. And most importantly, some of your business models are not necessarily designed to be sustainable. We well know that you're sometimes very interlinked with public funds, national budgets, and other public programs. So that is what's on here. In fact, operational self-sufficiency shows a similar trend, whereby the European peers have consistently been a little less self-sufficient than the global benchmark. Last but not least, let's move on to the loan portfolio quality indicators, part 30. What do we see? So historically, at least until 2019, part 30 has been higher in Europe, suggesting that the portfolio quality is not as good as the global average in Europe. However, in 2020, the reason why it seems to go down is mainly because in most of our European countries, the moratorium for COVID-19 has been horizontally implemented, and some of the moratoriums are still going on. Therefore, the impact of COVID-19 on part 30, especially in Europe, will be shown at a later stage. Well, for the global benchmark, you can see that it already peaked. The very last indicator, percentage of loan portfolio that restructured and moratorium. Historically, restructuring loans for borrowers with problems in repaying have been a much more common practice in Europe compared to our global peers. However, look at this. In 2020, restructuring or putting problematic loans in moratorium has certainly been the #1 solution to COVID-19 for now. So this was a very quick demo of the kind of analysis and comparing and benchmarking that any subscriber can do on Atlas. I hope it gave you a good glimpse, and we'll be happy to share more insights with you offline or online. Thank you very much. So I believe now we will give the floor to our guest from Proparco, Laurence Bottin.
Please, Laurence, the floor is yours. So just as a quick intro, Laurence is Senior Investment Officer at Proparco. Proparco was one of the sponsors of Atlas, and it is also one of Atlas subscribers. Please, Laurence, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucia. Actually, Proparco used to be a subscriber to Mixed Gold. So our partner MFIs used to report via Mixed Gold. Then, as you mentioned, Lucia, Mixed Gold stopped operating, but the wish of Proparco was to continue supporting initiatives that aim at increasing transparency of the sector and reducing the reporting workload for our partners. So we decided to replace Mixed Gold by Atlas. We took this opportunity to review our list of indicators to be reported. Honestly, we squeezed it quite a lot and reduced it to very basic indicators that we actually really use internally. And the indicators we selected were used to make an adapted version of the Atlas report template that our partners can use to report. We explained to our partners what Atlas is and the main benefits for them to report using Atlas. The benefits for them are first, if they accept to share their data with all subscribers, using Atlas actually reduces the reporting burden and increase the visibility of our partners as their data is available for all Atlas subscribers. Second benefit for them is that starting from the end of this year, 2020, they will receive a free comparative analysis from Atlas. From what I understand, this will be an analysis of their positioning in relation to the main financial and social indicators of their peers. So this benchmark will be or would be global or regional only, meaning that it's less detailed than what subscribers can access to. But still, I guess it's very useful as a benchmark starting point. At Proparco, we are still in a transition period, meaning that basically we already contacted all our existing partners to offer them to report via Atlas. For new loan agreements or new equity participations, from now on, it will be an obligation included in the legal documentation to report via Atlas. So far, majority of our partners accepted to use Atlas. Some may accept to share their reporting with Atlas subscribers. Others may prefer to remain anonymous to other subscribers. Last thing I would like to mention is the fact that internally within Proparco, Atlas is also very useful to get data when analyzing an institution, as it provides benchmarks. operational performance indicators, profitability indicators, social indicators, benchmarks regarding social performance, pricing, and client protection that are really useful for a fund provider as Proparco. So it's useful before going on the due diligence and after due diligence as well, as we will be able to compare the performance of our portfolio, for example, with the benchmarks. I guess that's all. And thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Laurence, for sharing your experience. Very interesting to hear. Now, Pallavi, please, Impact Manager at Maha Agriculture Microfinance. Thanks a lot for joining. Please feel free to unmute. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. So I work on environmental social governance as well as impact at Maha Agriculture Microfinance. And I would like to share our first impressions of Atlas since we got on the platform just about 3 weeks ago or so. And we are actively working on all the amazing data that is available. So I think the first thing that I would like to share from an SSP perspective is that the amount and the variety of data that is available is very, very holistic. We had this kind of impression beforehand when we didn't know so much about Atlas that it would probably have a higher focus on financial aspects, but it doesn't. There's a lot. There's financial, social, and there's also information, in terms of the macroeconomic context of countries. So I think that makes it very, very holistic. It can, become this go-to data source for a lot of us, just even beyond the financial and social indicators. One of our concerns, I guess, on a more larger level, was that we are an agri-focused FSP. So over 90% of our portfolio is, with smallholder farmers. We only do individual lending and work 100% in rural areas. And this by itself is very different to, the dominant model that exists in the country, which is, leaning towards urban group lending. And we were not sure, how useful benchmarking would be for us, before we started. But I think that what surprised us in a positive way is that we are able to look at the data also for institutions that are similar to us. So we are able to narrow it down, by looking at, the lending methodology, the age of the institution, the size of the institutions. And I think this particular aspect makes for a very interesting comparison for us. Because I can share one example, especially, with the onset of the pandemic, is that our PAR, when we look at, the Myanmar average and the Southeast Asia average or median on both aspects is relatively lower. And that is not by design, it is just by chance because we serve farmers, and people will still keep continuing, food production throughout this pandemic. So I think being able to narrow down, have those filters, and then look at institutions, with a similar size and a kind of a similar segment as ours is very meaningful for us in terms of, knowing where we stand and to kind of have some kind of an idea how we're performing compared to peers. So in terms of an exercise, I think that benchmarking has come in we have started doing it in a very timely fashion to coincide with an internal initiative that we are taking. So we're trying to develop an integrated risk management framework for the organization. And one of the first steps that we are now working on is a risk appetite statement. So essentially we take, risk, finance, some social indicators and create this risk appetite statement, which acts like kind of like an internal alarm bell for us to start taking measures in a stress situation. So I would say that having a benchmark has really helped kind of inform our threshold levels. So instead of just looking at our own historical data, looking at how we are performing compared to peers is helpful in terms of stress, putting thresholds for what is, green zone, what is the acceptable zone, and when it is kind of like a caution zone. So this is, of course, the first endeavor in which we will be incorporating these benchmarks. And I think we're very excited to do the next one, which is HR related, because Southeast Asia has traditionally a high turnover. This is also going to be something that we're going to incorporate in order to see how we perform compared to peers, and it will also help inform our staff retention strategies. So this kind of, how we've gotten started on our benchmarking journey. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you all.
Very much, Pallavi. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and congrats for the very interesting work at NAHA. Please, we would like now to open to Q&A. As Oscar anticipated, please feel free to write in the Q&A box so you can access there from the bottom right of your screen. Feel free to raise your hand as well. We're happy to hear suggestions, questions, any comments you might have.
Perhaps as as an icebreaker question, perhaps maybe I can jump in. Thank you very much, first of all, for the presentation. It was very clear and very helpful and promising as well. So you mentioned these social indicators. So we saw a few of them, like female entrepreneurs and a number of different dimensions. Could you tell us a little bit more about them? Like how many indicators are there, and also how complete is the data set? Let's say, like on average, let's say how many MFIs have actually reported this data? Just to get a sense, just like an estimate.
Thanks, Oscar. So there are a few thousand indicators available on Atlas, and I would say it's about 50% financial and risk and 50% impact social ESG, as Pallavi also mentioned. This being said, and there are a bit more than 1,000 financial service providers with data on Atlas in the last few years. This being said, there are no 1,200 data for each and every of the thousands of indicators, as you well imagine. So the availability of data depends on the data source. What we can do is we can share some of the most commonly reported data. So, impact, ESG, and social can be a very vast universe, and it is very industry specific. What we are used at seeing in our industry is the usual suspects, loan size as a proxy of the income level of the borrower, outreach in terms of number of borrowers, gender, rural, agriculture, but we can get a bit, so you usually find a good number of data for these usual suspects. What is interesting is potentially to dig a bit deeper and to go into client protection aspects. And I am quite proud of our industry because not all of the social business industry are as aware as we are, I personally believe, of the fact that we can also do harm in addition to doing good. And this is a very sound starting point in my view. And so all the efforts that previously the SMART campaign did and now the SPPF does to promote the improvement of client protection practices, avoiding over-indebtedness, being transparent, not to be abusive in collection practices. These are also data that are available on Atlas at a smaller scale. Why? Because the source of this data is typically certifications or ratings from MFR, always according to the confidentiality preferences of the data providers, as well as self-assessments from companies. And so because the topic is a bit more sensitive, there is typically less data available. So what we encourage users to do is to define their universe of interest in terms of indicators, which is different from user to user, and then to see also based on data availability what they would like to focus on. There's also all the hot topic of pricing, which is very hot in Europe as well, and we are an industry that will always have to deal with this reputational risk of finding the balance between justifying prices that may be higher than mainstream finance for very legitimate reasons, but at the same time being able to measure APR in a way that identifies room for improvement in responsible pricing.
Thank you. That's very clear, very helpful. We have a question that just came in from Septimiu from Romania. He says, from a geographical point of view, how detailed is the data? And can an Atlas user select certain indicators particular to a certain region in a country, for instance?
Right. So as our dear colleagues on the panel mentioned, there are two ways to access data on Atlas, as a subscriber or as a provider. Subscribing goes with a fee, providing is for free. This is for sustainability reasons. If you are a provider, the highest granularity that you can have if you provide your data in a nominative manner is your region, ECA, Europe and Central Asia, for example. If you want to see Romania or another country, well, you need to subscribe. And this is, for example, the example of MAHA, Microfinance Agriculture. Even individual financial service providers can subscribe, professional associations can subscribe, etc. This gives access to the country level. Now, to protect confidentiality, operators, and so financial service providers, as well as international organizations, the Opportunity International, the Vision Fund, the FINCAS, they can see data in the country or countries where they operate only in an aggregate manner. Unfortunately, it is not possible to see individual data of a direct competitor in the country of operation, while it is possible outside of the country of operation.
Thank you, Lucia. Very clear. So, and also the smallest geographical unit is the country, right? So I understood that correctly. There's no regions within countries that have their own level of analysis.
So that is correct. In the filters, the local administrative division is present on Atlas as an outreach indicator, meaning that based on the poverty and exclusion indexes of administrative regions in one country, and based on the presence of a financial service provider in those countries, we calculated weighted average that gives an indication, a proxy of the poverty/exclusion level of the borrowers reached by that FSP. So answer is yes, in filters, the maximum you can get to is country, but there is one indicator that is built through administrative divisions data.
Thank you. Very helpful. In the meantime, we have another question coming from Shamsuddin from Taylor's University in Malaysia. The question is, can we download the Atlas data for free for academic research purposes?
Thank you very much for your question. So, unfortunately not. Even universities and research institutes, they need to pay a subscription fee in order to access anonymized database for research purposes. The subscription fees varies between 3,000 euros and 5,000 euros, depending on whether you'd like only the social or the financial block, or if you want it all. And we have started having universities subscribing to Atlas. I'm sorry to give you a bad news, but you know, sustainability is key and we are here to stay. And so this is a priority for Atlas.
Thanks, Lucia, very clear. So from the chat right now, there's no other questions, and I'm looking at the hands. I don't see any hands in the air. So I might take the opportunity to sneak in one or two more questions, unless I would give priority to anyone participating, but given the opportunity, I can't say no. So you mentioned that the SDGs are integrated quite well into the interface, right? And that's, of course, something that from an advocacy point of view, we like to demonstrate very much how our sector aligns with achieving the goals of the SDGs. So is there any kind of structured output that comes out of the system, like reports or anything that sort of synthesizes how the sector maybe globally or regionally, I don't know, contributes to the SDGs with quantified indicators?
Yeah, very good point, Oscar. Thanks. So this is planned for next year. It is another output that, as you have guessed, is organized not by indicator but by SDG. And this is based on Atlas mapping of Atlas indicators to the SDGs. As Ayako mentioned, this is applicable when an indicator is plausibly associated to a positive contribution to a specific SDG. And if you have in mind the structure of the SDG, there's a hierarchy of 4 levels. We map at the most granular level available to get to the best precision we can. Association is divided into direct and indirect for transparency purposes. And so what will be available next year is also an output that will synthesize the plausible positive contribution of our industry by SDG based on this mapping.
That's great. We really look forward to seeing that. I think it will help support discussions and policymakers very much with many stakeholders. Then I think one last question that I also had was, you mentioned in the introduction the existence of EaSI Micro, which of course still exists and will continue to exist in parallel. How do you see the future of these two projects going next to each other? Will there be any kind of partnership or overlap, or will one take functions of the other, or do you have any vision on how that could or should go?
Sure. Please, Ayako, feel free to take it, or I'm happy to take it as you prefer.
Sure, I can gladly answer the question. We obviously see synergies between the MICPRO and Atlas, as Atlas has already a robust infrastructure to take in the data and transform it into graphics and figures that can actually give clear messages to the financial service providers and compare themselves with their peers. We would be glad to be in conversation with the developers of MICPRO. In fact, there's some discussions going on, but we are good peers and we'd love to exchange ideas with the MICPRO developers, and we'll see what can be done in the near future.
Okay, great. Excellent. Then for now, I think I have no more questions. I will, of course, come back to you when and if I do. And of course, that goes for everyone who is listening today. If you have any questions that come up on this and you'd like to know more, you can either check out, of course, the Atlas website. Can you remind us of the URL of that?
So it's www.atlasdata.org.
Perfect. You can either contact also any of the colleagues here online or us at EMN as well, and we can pass on the message about that. We are recording the session today, so if you want to go over anything like the demonstration or anything that has been shown today, you will be able to do that, and the PowerPoint presentation will also be available. After the after you exit the session today, you will be presented with a small questionnaire, which is very important for us so that we can tailor future sessions to better match, or to even better match, let's say, the interest of participants. So do take the time. It only takes like 2 or 3 minutes to fill it out. That will be very helpful for us. And then, we're coming to the end of our session, and I'd like to just thank again, of course, first of all, the EaSI program for the support of setting this up today, and of course, for the annual conference context more globally, our partners and our sponsors. So the EIB group is a partner, and as a sponsor, the Galileo Network and BNP Paribas. Then the only thing that's left for me to do is to thank all 4 of our speakers today. It was a very helpful and insightful session, which I'm sure we all appreciated. We had about 64 attendees, which I think is a very good number. And I hope we see a very good growth of the Atlas project in the near future. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a, I was going through my mental checklist and I almost forgot one. There is one more thing. There is one more session today. The next session is on financial help for entrepreneurs and will take place at 2 o'clock. So if you have not signed up for that yet, we highly encourage you to do so. And of course, for any of the other sessions in the next 2 days. Thank you again, and take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.